So today I'm going to do something that's a little bit different. I'm not going to show you something that I've made. I am going to answer MakerMuse's hashtag 3D printing on YouTube set of questions. I saw it this morning and I thought, that's actually kind of interesting. I have made some interesting stuff this week, but actually making video out of it could be a bit difficult. So not going to do that. Going to do the hashtag 3D printing on YouTube video. So let's kick off with question 1, which is, when did you first hear about 3D printing? So I think for me, it would have been about 2002, 2003. I was working at a university and the computer science department had got a full color inkjet powder sintering color 3D printer. And I was like, okay, kind of interesting, but there was no structural integrity to anything it made. And so I didn't see much use for it beyond art. And frankly, I don't think the computer science department did either. I remember they had to do a little test print every week to make sure that the powder hadn't solidified and that the ink wasn't drying up, just so that if somebody did use it, there would actually be a working 3D printer in their building. I'm pretty sure it's long gone now, but yeah, that was one of the first ones. I think I found some similar sort of test prints, and I'll put one of those up on the screen to show that off. Then fast forward about 10 years, I was living in Canada, and I went to a maker fair over there, and I saw a gentleman who had made a 3D printer. I've found some photos of it, and I'll put those up. He's still into 3D printing. He's got a blog, johnbeeler.com, I think it is, and he still talks about 3D printing. And his first 3D printer was, like many of the time, it was homemade. It was made out of parts that you could replicate with the wrap style of 3D printing, and it was comparatively slow to what you can get today. And I suspect it probably needed a lot of maintenance. I also found it interesting going back through the photos that I'm pretty sure it was using 2.85mm filament, which I have not seen any current printers that use, but I haven't really looked that closely. But yeah, it's interesting that not only has printer technology advanced by leaps and bounds, the actual filament that you use is not the same anymore. So question 2, which is, what was the first thing you 3D printed? To be quite technical, it wasn't me who printed it, but I did get something 3D printed about 4 years ago from Shapeways. I got a Mac Plus from Facebook Marketplace, and it was missing a battery cover on the back door. And so I found an STL of that, and I got Shapeways to print that. The cogs in the floppy drive are also cheese, which is apparently a common issue on Macs of that vintage. And so I had them print up some new cogs as well, and I've used like 3 of them, and I've still got another 9 that I could use. In terms of what I first printed when I got my own 3D printer, if you've seen Die Hard, there's a scene where he writes on the chest of a dummy, or it might be a dead body, I can't remember which. Ho ho ho, now I have a machine gun. I did something like that, but ho ho ho, now I have a multi-material capable 3D printer. It took like 2 hours to print. I think I probably could have come up with something a little bit better as my first print, but I didn't. Okay, now question number 3, which is, do you view 3D printing as a hobby or a tool, and why? So obviously the early ones that I saw from people at maker fairs, I didn't just go to the 2012 one in Vancouver, I also went to like New York and Bay Area, and I saw plenty of 3D printers there, and it kind of got to the point where I was just getting bored of seeing FDM 3D printers. And at I think it was the Bay Area one, I saw the Formlabs resin 3D printers, one of the first ones that came out. And I thought, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I saw the price tag and I'm like, okay, that's not really something that I really want to get into as a hobby. And I didn't at that time have any particular use for it as a tool. Fast forward to about a month or two ago, I was in a electronics store here in Australia. We still have them. And they had some 3D printers on display as well as some things that they'd made. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is the time that I start learning 3D modeling. And so I had a bit of a play around with Tinkercad. I was making a charging station, like a 90 centimeter high wooden charging station. And so I was like, let's model that up in Tinkercad. And then having got happy with it for large scale things, I was like, okay, there's a few things I want to 3D print. So let's try smaller things. And let's try doing it in Autodesk Fusion. And there's a learning curve to Autodesk Fusion. It's certainly not something simple, but it wasn't that hard to get started with. And so once I had made the 3D models of the things that I wanted to 3D print, I said to myself, okay, this is viable. This is a tool that I can use to make the things that I want to make, as well as looking at things that are made on the community. So one of the things I'm into is vintage Macs. Not actually in the background of this one. I'll show you that another day. But I've done things like print out this, which is a reinforcement fillet for a PowerBook 1400 because the plastics are not very good. I think there's a rhyme that goes, "Eeny, meeny, miny, Michael Spindler, plastics crap." Anyway, I printed out a reinforcement fillet for it, and I will be gluing that in a future video and prolonging the lifespan of a computer that was first sold 28 years ago. But it's a very useful one. And also things like printing up SSD mounts to go into 3.5 inch drive bays. I gave an old computer away to a friend recently, and I was like, well, I need something to mount an SSD in the drive bays of this. So there was, of course, an STL easily available, and I just clicked print and stuck the SSD in and stuck that in the drive thing, and it wasn't. It took 5 minutes of my time and waiting for it to print. And I think that's really the great benefit of 3D printing becoming reliable and easy, is that you can use it as a tool without having to make it a hobby as well. So the fourth one is, what is the best 3D printer according to you? I bought a Bamboo Labs X1 Carbon, and it's a very nice 3D printer. It's not perfect. I've had some failed prints. How much of that is its fault and how much of that is my fault is probably a lot of it leans towards me. I was printing something this afternoon and I had 2 failures in a row, and I was thinking back to things that I'd read, and I'm like, you've kept the door closed and you're printing PLA, so too much heat soak, it's not adhering to the pad. And so I opened the door and printed it again, and it failed again. But I removed one of the pieces from the plate, and so then I just printed 2 of them and they came out fine. So that was a user error, I guess. I was aware that was a potential risk and I didn't address it, and well, I lost, I don't know, 50 grams of filament or something. So it's a very good printer. You pay for it, but the rest of the Bamboo Labs range also look pretty amazing. And so it's a big leap to go from not having a 3D printer to having a 3D printer that costs north of $2,000. But I wanted to make sure I got something that was capable for whatever I threw at it. And at this point, I've done things like ABS, GF, glass fiber ABS with it for some stuff for structural use, but then I've worked out that that's actually a little bit brittle as well, so maybe I just needed PLA. But at any rate, this printer will meet my needs for the foreseeable future, and I'm quite happy to have something like that. But then, as the Maker's Muse video says, the A1 Mini is kind of cool too. And I got to say, during some long prints where I've been like, oh, I wish I could just print this off, but I'm printing that off and I've got the wrong filament in it, and even in an AMS. Maybe I'll get an A1 at some point in the future as well. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe not. We'll come back to this video if I do. And then number 5 was, what is your number 1 tip for beginners? Well, I'm a beginner. My number one tip when learning anything, and I've learned a lot of things in my life. Some of them hard lessons, some of them fun lessons, is to look at what has come before you. Look at what other people are doing in the space. For me, it was getting a foundation of knowledge about 3D modeling. I'd been scared of 3D modeling. I think I'd tried it once in the past and hadn't been particularly successful, but with Fusion and all of the videos I've found online about Fusion, it's, once you understand the parlance of what they are calling different things, you just go to YouTube and you say Fusion, how to mirror object, Fusion, how to extrude object. It's definitely not how I do my day IT job, but it's a good way to get started with things like 3D modeling. And then once you've got 3D modeling sorted out, then it's a matter of working out the materials, questions of what you're going to print with if it's not PLA, because frankly PLA is nice and cheap and cheerful, and it does most of the things many people will need. So that's my take on 3D printing, having been somebody with a 3D printer for like 2 weeks now, or 3 weeks, whatever it is. But I've been watching the 3D printing world for the last 20 years, and I'm glad that it's now at a point that it is a tool, and it is an easy to use tool, and it is a fairly reliable tool. So yeah, I hope somebody finds this interesting. Just down in the bottom there, just if it goes over 10, that's probably a good number. I will be back next week, hopefully with a video showing some things I've been building. I have been making my office a little bit more presentable. Still not finished with that, but hopefully next week. And I will see you in that one. Thanks, bye.